Deanreldea Ezrest, otherwise known as King Dean, is one of the most mysterious and promising characters in Witch Hat Atelier. Because he is the Island King, he possesses a lot of prestige, power, and influence over the world of Witch Hat. As of chapter 64, there's a lot that is still unknown about King Dean, but there is still plenty of hype around him that warrants fans to be excited about his potential and his future role in the story. In this video, I'll be going over his importance to the world of Witch Hat, break down all his major scenes, and then talk about future plotlines and theories he may be involved in as the story progresses. If you end up enjoying this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to support the content, and support my Patreon too for more videos like this one. The link is in the description down below. So what exactly makes King Dean so exciting and mysterious? Let's talk about it. Everybody get your fucking hands up. King Dean holds three major titles. He's the Island King, the King of Ezrest, and the ruler of the Six Monarchs. But what exactly do these titles mean, and why are they important? First, let's look at the map of the world of Witch Hat. This map is the setting where Witch Hat Atelier takes place, and the land where most Witch Hat characters live is called the Land of the Pact, or the Zoza Peninsula. Humans and witches live together on this continent, but witches chose to live in isolation within their own secret societies. This means that all the official kingdoms of the continent are ruled by non-witches, but we will just call them humans for now. The Zoza Peninsula has 6 major nations, each with its own king or queen. Each monarch rules over their own nation, with King Dean ruling over Ezrest, the largest city of all of the Zoza Peninsula. Ezrest is where the Silver Eve Festival takes place, and it attracts people from all over the Zoza Peninsula. One can say it's the most important city in the series, and King Dean being its ruler shows how big of an influence he carries in this world. We can expect that most humans in the story will most likely belong to or serve under one of the 6 monarchs. All the monarchs and the nations of the Zoza Peninsula also formed an alliance with each other, so it's unlikely that we'll get any wars or violent conflicts among the human nations. Even though all the nations are allied together in what seems like a balanced, equal partnership, there is still one man that stands above all of them. One who rules over the alliance as the leader of the allied kingdoms. That man is the Island King, King Deanreldea Ezrest. With this position, King Dean pretty much rules over the entirety of humanity. All the major kingdoms and nations we see or will see in the Zoza Peninsula are under his influence. He is humanity's main representative, and he is the one responsible for the prosperity of humans in this story. In Witch Hat so far, there are 4 major scenes with King Dean, and all 4 reveal great aspects of his character. The first scene takes place in chapter 48, which also happens to be his introduction chapter. The chapter not only introduced King Dean, but also introduced the other 5 monarchs and the newly appointed Sage of Friendship. The Sage of Friendship is a highly prestigious title for a witch, and they are in charge of foreign relations, usually with humans. This means that important human representatives most likely talk and interact with the Sage of Friendship more than any other witch in the story. The old Sage of Friendship was Agendiv, but he was arrested for corruption and got replaced with his assistant, Lagra. The sudden change made the 5 monarchs very uneasy, since all the rapport they built throughout the years of Agendil won't apply to the newcomer Lagra. The winter season is approaching, which is known to be very harsh for the human kingdoms, and having an inexperienced Sage of Friendship could lead to disastrous consequences for their people. The monarchs were mad about the sudden change of leadership, but they used this opportunity to also complain about many other things, including the witches' behavior, the enormous magic tax they have to pay, and the witches ignoring their calls for help against bandits. Before the situation can get any worse, King Dean enters with a powerful presence and immediately calms down the room. King Dean supports the reason why witches choose not to ally themselves with any nation or king. He apologizes to the witches and requests them to be far more friendly with him, since he wants to have a closer relationship with them. He apologizes once more and reminds the witches that the core problem of that entire argument or conflict was the stress created by the harsh winters that will be affecting the human kingdom soon. He tells the witches that everything they currently enjoy is due to their magical blessings, and continues to thank them for all they've done so far. He then proposes a covenant that pushes for the witches to continue to support the human kingdoms throughout the upcoming harsh winter season, even though the witches were trying to avoid being too involved in the affairs of humans. The scene ends after King Dean got Lagra to accept the covenant. This scene was a great way of introducing King Dean as a competent and charismatic leader. He understood that the other monarchs were mainly worried about how they would deal with the harsh winter. The complaints about the witches' behavior and rules stemmed from the fear that they may not receive the magical assistance they need to get through the harsh winter successfully. Since the witches aren't forced to do anything they don't want to do, it was frustrating for the monarchs to realize that their kingdoms might suffer even though help is right in front of their faces. King Dean was able to discern that even though all their complaints were valid, as long as he can solve the problem of securing magical aid for the winter, the monarchs will be happy and the human kingdoms will be able to thrive for another year. Through his slick words, he was able to restore the peace between the humans and witches, and then have the witches agree to the covenant that ensures the humans will receive aid during the harsh winter. We later see Belderid point out how slick and annoying King Dean is for changing the topic from the complaints back to the winter and then making it very hard for the witches to back away from the covenant to help the humans when needed. Lagra's comments support this idea since he says he felt forced to accept the covenant. Now, the witches most likely have to properly respond to any extra help the humans ask of them instead of refusing like usual. King Dean lives up to these titles by showing his elite leadership qualities in negotiations and securing a good future for his people. As the story moves on, we come to understand that King Dean is more than just a competent king. The history and mystery we learn about him and his family lineage may end up as, if not more important for the story than his current powerful political positions and leadership qualities. We learn more about King Dean in chapter 53 through his son Yolio and Quifri. The scene starts with King Dean who looks like he's in the middle of a ritual or an operation. It looks like King Dean got dirty with a mysterious substance and there are cups of that substance positioned around what looks like a dead body. King Dean seems to be in a position akin to a prayer, and there's an audience watching as he stands over the body. Yolio comes in to greet him and notices the dead body. Yolio says, "You've lost another another patient. I'm sorry to see it. It wouldn't have to be this way, not if the power of magic was in our nation's grasp." The conversation ends with King Dean silently looking at his son. As this entire sequence was happening from start to finish, Quirfy was providing narration for King Dean. Quirfy said, "Magic is infinite. It is a wondrous, bottomless wellspring of power. It may be drawn upon again and again, and it will never go dry. But only we possess the cup that draws freely of those powers, and it is paramount we do not bestow it upon the ruler of this land, nor anyone else in Ezrest's royal house. For the peninsular or island king is a man of two faces and two names. At times, King Deanreldea goes by another name, the King of Life, a monarch who excels in the science of life and death, the greatest master of medical arts in our realm, and the last of a very old, very proud house known for its skill with healing craft that was wiped from history by fellow witches on the day of the pact." Despite being only 5 pages, we learn a lot from this scene. We now know that King Dean has ties to witches and is a direct descendant of the medical witches. The medical witches, as the name implies, were witches dedicated to medicine. They were eventually targeted after medical magic was deemed forbidden, but we now know their descendants survived and continue to live on. The medical witches were the last and strongest obstacle the old sages had to face before they could completely win the war. During Quirfy's speech, he mentioned the vast potential of magic and talked about how King Dean or anyone else in Ezra's family should not be allowed to have it. It may be because they fear a second coming of the medical witches, or perhaps even fear that they may learn of their history and want to seek revenge. The idea of someone possessing both medicine and magic seemed to be seen as very dangerous, so King Dean is the absolute last person that they want to have access to magic. The scene also shows flashes of how King Dean is fitting into his title as a medical master. We are unsure what ritual or operation he was doing on that body, but he was being watched by many people, and we can presume he was trying to save the person in question. During the operation, King Dean got very messy working with the mysterious substance. This shows that despite being a king and a very important person in the world, he still doesn't mind getting down and dirty when it comes to performing his medical operations. Based on Yolio's words, it may seem that Yolio views the subject as a specimen before he views them as a patient. He then says this wouldn't have to be done if they had magic. This can imply many different things. It's possible that King Dean shares Yolio's view, and saw the person he was operating on as a specimen for an experiment rather than a patient that needed help. It is possible that due to the lack of magic, King Dean felt forced to experiment different ways to try and further advance whatever he is looking for. We have very little information on what King Dean is aiming towards and how he views the people he's operating on, so nothing is conclusive yet and it can go either way. The main takeaway from this scene, however, is that King Dean is known as the Master of Medicine, and he's also a descendant of the infamous clan of medical witches. The third scene in chapter 59 shows King Dean taking care of Siege Belderwood, and it adds great detail to King Dean's character by showing his medical knowledge and his view on the balance of the world. The scene starts with King Dean examining Belderwood's body and diagnosing him with bed sores. He then breaks down what caused the bed sores and talks about the potential remedies Belderwood should take to alleviate his symptoms. King Dean then offers to teach Belderwood's apprentice about medical techniques so they can prevent the situation from happening again. But when Belderwood rejects his offer, King Dean remembers that it is against the law of witches to produce medicine. King Dean then gives a monologue about the balance of the world. He says, "The long-lasting balance of our world is only possible because of an inviolable pact between people from different places who share no friendship. Humans and wizards should not get more involved than necessary and should not venture into each other's territory. It's an ancient agreement. I don't particularly understand it. If it would help someone who's suffering in front of you, then isn't it reasonable to share knowledge from both sides?" It's a great monologue and is one that asks for witches to share their magical knowledge and humans to share their medical knowledge with each other so they can both grow and advance together. Belderwood, however, saw through the setup from King Dean and pointed out that he's making this request in the middle of medical treatment to trick him by disguising domination over witches to look like salvation for witches. King Dean is a bit stunned at Belderwood's word and then says, "Clad in the form of salvation? Don't witches know much more about that?" There was a moment of silence before Belderwood gets a bit aggressive and swears that he will not break the pact. He warns King Dean that the balance must be maintained no matter what, because once the scale tilts, it won't be just one side getting an advantage, but it will be the entire fulcrum that falls. King Dean listens to the message and then dismisses himself for putting Belderwood in a bad mood. As he's walking away, King Dean talks to himself about how he understands why witches don't want to break the pact. He says power is more difficult to control than it is to wield. He also admits that things can get very unstable when the life or death of a person is involved. Despite all that, however, he still hopes for access to magic one day. He then says that despite harsh reality telling you otherwise, everyone still dreams of waking up with miraculous powers, able to turn the impossible into the possible. Lagra and Belderwood are left in a room by themselves and they talk about King Dean. Lagra asks Belderwood that hypothetically, if King Dean was to learn magic and rule over both medicine and magic, what type of king will he become? Belderwood says he will become a demon king. Being capable of ruling over both medicine and magic, to him, would turn King Dean into Demon King Deanreldea. There was a lot to take in of this scene, but one of the biggest takeaways we got is that King Dean has a strong motivation to acquire magic. He most likely already knew about the rule that witches aren't allowed to produce magic, and still offered to teach it to the apprentice under the guise of helping Belderwood with his health. Doing this allowed him to bring up complaints about the rule, which he said didn't make much sense, and pushed Belderwood towards teaching him magic in return for King Dean teaching him medicine. Belderwood, however, saw through this and denied King Dean's advances. We already had many hints that King Dean is interested in magic, but almost everyone is. The way King Dean goes about trying to acquire it, however, is very sneaky and uses a lot of trickery. We also learned that witches, or at least Belderwood himself, view medicine extremely highly and even said that offering to teach the medicine is akin to trying to have domination over witches. I personally always had magic as the clear winner over medicine, but given the nature of medicine being the difference between life and death, I can see why it can be held to the same degree or even higher. This reinforces the idea of there being a balance between the world of humans wielding medicine and witches wielding magic. King Dean's response to Belderwood also hints that he views magic as superior, since he said witches know way more about making people succumb to domination if it was clad in the form of salvation. We saw in chapter 49 just how reliant the humans are on the power of witches, and their help has become essential for human sustainability, so it makes sense why King Dean will also assess that witches are trying to dominate humans by pretending to be their saviors. The fact that both parties believe that the other is using their specialty to try and dominate them also attests to the balance that Shirahama is trying to portray in this world. The last important piece of this scene was the hint that if King Dean was to learn magic, he would be considered a demon king. In this series, magic and medicine are held to extremely high degrees. The strongest witches have great magic, and the most influential human family have great medical techniques. If King Dean was to acquire both, he might become the most dangerous person in the series. It will be a revival of the medical witches of the past, who were the last standing and strongest group that opposed the sages before the inevitable downfall. The final scene takes place in chapter 64. A giant leech monster is attacking the people of Ezrest due to forbidden magic from the former sage Ingendil. This is an extreme situation that is also unprecedented, so this allowed us to see how King Dean acts in intense and unpredictable situations. The scene starts with many people, including Tartar, getting injured and poisoned by the giant leeches. King Dean is walking with his group and recognizes that these are castle leeches, but he's confused about how the size of them is so different than the ones they keep at the castle. He understands they get bigger when they drink blood, but the size it's at right now is something he has never seen before. Belderich tries to get him to take shelter, but King Dean responds with an inspirational monologue instead. King Dean says, "Find shelter? Not a chance, for my name is Ezrest. As the king of this island and a student of medicine, a servant of life and death, I am Deanreldea Ezrest. As my people are under attack and falling, what else can I do but treat them?" As his monologue ends, he dashes away with Belderich chasing after him as the scene comes to a close. This was a short scene, but it reinforces a lot about King Dean's character. This scene emphasizes his medical knowledge since he was able to discern the attributes of the castle leeches despite it being in a form he's never seen before. We also got to see his pride as a king and his determination to live up to his titles. Based on his monologue, he's completely focusing on trying his best to save and treat his people that need him instead of prioritizing his own life due to a giant unknown monster terrorizing his city. This scene helps justify why the citizens accept King Dean as their main representative and as the king of the Zaza Peninsula. There are many future plot lines to look out for when it comes to King Dean. A big one will be learning more about the medical tower that King Dean is heading towards. His wife said that in the medical tower out west, there is a blood reservoir frozen in time by magic. It is highly probable that no current witches froze blood to help King Dean with medical operations, since medicine and human blood are both things that are taboo or dangerous towards society. King Dean, however, is a descendant of the clan of medical witches, and there is a chance that they left behind medical knowledge and some magical contraptions to help with medical operations. If this is true, we can learn much more about medical witches. Again, they were the last major clan to oppose the three sages before they were wiped out, so any information we get about them will naturally be very interesting and can lead to some bigger plot points in the future. We currently don't have enough information to see where this will go, but there are so many interesting ways this can develop, and it's very exciting to see where Shirahama will take it. Another major plotline to consider will be the Brim Hats are looking to see King Dean for a reason unknown to us. Coco and Tartar are bound by magical handcuffs until they successfully help Kusis and the Neanea's group meet King Dean. We are unsure why they want to meet him, but there are many possible reasons. They may want to work together for a common goal, which could potentially lead to King Dean discovering magic through them, the same as Kusis did. They could also try to get him to heal some of their members who can only be saved through medical techniques. There's also a chance that some of the Brim Hats are also descendants of the Medical Witch Clan, or knew about the Medical Witch Clan and are trying to meet King Dean to establish a relationship with him. There's no way to know for sure, but it is exciting to think about the future that awaits us in this story. Another plotline involving King Dean is that Kusis, Tartar, and Coco want to meet him so he can help them heal Dagda. Dagda is in an eternal death loop due to time reversal magic. He keeps getting revived by Kusis right before the arrow wounds he got from the earlier ambush kills him. If King Dean was to heal the wounds Dagda got from the ambush, they wouldn't need to use time reversal magic anymore, and Dagda can return to being the loving father we all know and love. One minor plotline to pay attention to will be discovering exactly what Yolio meant when he said it wouldn't have to be this way, not if the power of magic was in the nation's grasp. We do not know what experiment they were doing, and how magic could save or stop them from needing to do it anymore, but it is clear that regarding their goals, magic is seen almost as a necessity. We saw Yolio also try to recruit Atelier and King Dean trying to get Belderide on their side. We are unsure what they need it for, but if they do somehow get magic, it will be a humongous turning point in the series. King Dean and Yolio also has a brush buddy, which are creatures that are mainly attracted to magical ink. It is a bit odd for them to have a creature like this since they are just normal humans with no access to magic, but it is possible that they were attracted to ink of magical contraption around the city, or that King Dean or Yolio unknowingly have some magical ink but are unaware of its magical properties. All these little hints and minor plot lines may not lead to some crazy huge reveal, but it is certainly worth noting that many things are pointing towards King Dean and his family being heavily affiliated with magic. As Butterwit implied, if King Dean was to somehow get magic in the future, he might be the most unstoppable and influential person due to having control over both medicine and magic. As a character, King Dean so far has had a great impression on me. King Dean is a proud man with a bright future. He does a great job of being a leader of not only Ezrest, but of humanity as a whole. King Dean has been shown to hold his own and sometimes even outsmart the sages when it comes to political negotiations. He's also the best doctor in the land and is the main face of the only thing humans have over witches, medicine. He's a descendant of the medical witch clan and he's even interested in obtaining magic for himself. Learning more about his family history with the medical witch clan or his efforts about potentially obtaining magic will serve us some amazing storylines for the future. I have complete trust in Shirahama to deliver and I'm extremely excited to witness the amazing things King Dean will do for the story. If you ended up enjoying this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Also subscribe to my Patreon for early access to more videos like this one. The link is in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.